Hello, comrades. Welcome back to my channel. A while ago, I came across an isolated incident in the news, which is two children they burned a dog to death. It wasn't a major national event, and the reaction was far from unanimous. It was a polarized moment. Some people condemned it, while others offered cold functionalist justifications. What struck me wasn't the event itself, but rather the specific logic used by those people who defend it. The idea that something or someone only has value if it is useful. In their view, if a creature, or even a human, no longer serves its function, or if it creates trouble instead of value, then its right to exist becomes negotiable. It's a pure transactional worldview. It suggests that dignity is not an inherent quality of life, but a currency that you must earn through functionality and compliance. This logic is seductive because it feels hyper-rational. It treats the world like a machine, where anything that doesn't optimize output is just noise to be eliminated. But this is where the danger lies. Once you adopt a transactional standard for who or what deserves to be treated with care, you are no longer making a moral judgment, you are building a mechanism for exclusion. It raised a question for me. When we begin to prioritize this narrow definition of utility over dignity, where exactly does that logic lead? When we define life by its outputs, what happens to us when we are no longer useful? So, why do so many of us gravitate towards this logic of strong? Why does it feel so satisfying to draw a line between the useful and the expendable? In the context of the intense social competition we experience in China today, people are under immense pressure. We live in a world that demands constant growth, constant productivity, and constant success. When life becomes a race that never ends, the logic of the strong acts as a psychological shield. It's a way of saying, if I am strong, if I am useful, if I follow the rules of the game, I will be safe. But this is a dangerous delusion. Psychologically, this is what we call victim blaming, a defense mechanism to convince ourselves that the world is inherently fair. If we can find a reason for someone else's misfortune, if we can blame the dog's owner or the victim, or the weak, we reassure ourselves that we are safe from similar disasters. It's a way to telling ourselves, as long as I don't make those mistakes, I won't suffer. But beneath that defensive wall lies something colder. We are effectively training ourselves to measure the value of life through a transactional lens. We start to view everything, animals, colleagues, even our own family members, by their utility. When the social discourse is dominated by this relentless drive for efficiency, we lose our capacity to see inherent dignity in anything that isn't productive. And when we stop seeing the inherent dignity in others, we are no longer building a civilization. We are merely building a system of assets and liabilities. The irony is, by worshipping this cold strongman logic, we aren't becoming stronger. We are just becoming more fragile because we have lost the very thing that makes us human, our ability to stand with the vulnerable. I want to propose a radical shift in how we view compassion. We often dismiss the protection of the weak as sainthood or sentimentalism, but in reality, it is the most rational, self-interested choice you can probably make. Think about it through the lens of a social contract. Imagine you were asked to design the rules of our society, but with only one condition. You don't know where you will end up in that society. You don't know if you will be born into wealth or poverty, if you will be a high achiever or someone who struggles with life's demands, or if you will even have the health or luck to remain useful to the system. Behind this veil of ignorance, what kind of rule would you choose? You probably would choose a society that protects the vulnerable, not out of charity, but out of necessity, because you would want a safety net for yourself just in case. But look at where we are now. When we cheer for the destruction of the unproductive or the weak, we are essentially tearing down our own insurance policy. We are building a social architecture where anyone who loses their utility, whether through old age, illness, or simply failing to keep up with the pace of a relentless society, becomes disposable. The definition of the weak is constantly shifting. The strong of today can easily become expendable of tomorrow. By normalizing the idea that those without value should be discarded, we aren't creating a meritocracy, we are constructing a guillotine. If we build a world where compassion is seen as weakness, we are guaranteeing that eventually the blade will fall on everyone. Protecting the weak, then, isn't about being a saint, it's about ensuring that we live in a society that doesn't eventually consume us too. It's the ultimate form of self preservation. When I reflect on this topic, I find myself turning back to the philosophers who have shaped my own thinking, like Nietzsche and Hegel. They offer us a way to navigate these difficult questions without falling into the trap of a cynicism. Nietzsche once spoke of the will to power, a concept often misunderstood. But I've come to see it not as a license to dominate others, but as a call to build a self that is so centered and so disciplined that it doesn't need to prove its strength by belittling the vulnerable. True inner strength is about the capacity to create, to remain upright, and to exercise self mastery. The moment we feel the urge to lash out or to view another life as expendable, it might be worth asking, what is that telling us about our own inner state? Are we perhaps looking for a sense of power in all the wrong places? Similarly, Hegel's work on the nature of identity suggests that we define ourselves through our relationships with others. If we build a world where we only define our worth by how much we can control or disregard, we end up in a very lonely place. We find ourselves in a system where everything is reduced to a transaction. When we strip away our capacity for empathy, we lose a mirror that reflects our own humanity. Whether we are looking at the way we treat animals or how we treat those in our society who are struggling, we are ultimately engaging in a dialogue with our own nature. If we treat the vulnerable as disposable, we are, in a sense, normalizing the idea that we too could be disposed by that same logic. Philosophy, to me, isn't just about abstract ideas. It's about recognizing that our treatment of the other is, ultimately, a reflection of how we view ourselves. Think about all of this. I realize that it's easy to feel disheartened. When we are constantly exposed to the noise and coldness of the online world, it feels like the current is pushing us towards a darker, more indifferent place. I've had the moments, like many of you, where I felt the weight of my own frustrations. In those moments, I felt the power of that same darkness, the temptation to stop caring or to lash out just to reclaim a sense of control. But I've learned that the most profound response to a cold word isn't to become cold yourself, it's to consciously choose the opposite. Choosing restraint in a time of algorithmic rage is not an act of weakness, it's an act of rebellion. It's a way of saying that your humanity, your capacity for empathy, and your definition of a good life belong to you, not to the system and not to the mob. We don't protect the vulnerable because it's easy or because they are perfect. We protect them because we refuse to accept a world where mercy is seen as a liability. That moment of hesitation you feel when you see something cruel, that pause, that stop, is where your character is built. It's the small, quiet resistance that keeps us human. When we strip away our capacity for empathy, we lose a mirror that reflects our own humanity. If we convince ourselves that the vulnerable are merely disposable because they lack immediate utility, we are not rising above nature, we are simply descending into a void. And in that void, the same cold, transactional scale that we apply to others will eventually be turned on us. When we prioritize survival of the fittest over the dignity of life, We are not looking at a high functioning society. We are looking at a system that has forgotten what it means to be human.